Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson, spiritualtherapist.com. And on this Sunday in July 2022, it is my great honor and delight to bring back my beautiful friend, the ever glowing, the globally loved Dr. Christiane Northrup. Hello, darling.
Hello, it's so good to be with you. And here we are at the height of the summer, and I'm in Maine where it's 90, but we have lots of trees. It's not like Texas. I was just talking with friends in Texas, where it's 105 and they don't have enough water and the usual things. So I'm very, very thrilled to be at the height of the summer in wonderful health, and just had a fantastic little morning at church this morning. I found a church where I can feel God with all of the people. It's quite wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. How nourishing for the soul and the heart. How beautiful.
Yes.
Now, you were born a rebel. You were born an individual, independent woman, girl, like thinker. And that spirit that you came in with, it's definitely very much who you are today, is it not?
Yes, it is. It feels like it took decades to get the conditioning. Please be nice, think it, but don't say it. Can you keep your voice down? Like getting rid of all of that and now have utter self-trust, but coming really from a place of loving people, loving humanity. And there are times when we get frustrated. And so I say things like, well, if Darwin is correct, a lot of the people who are going to be giving us problems won't be here.
Oh my God. You mentioned Darwin, and of course, most of us in the Western world in particular have had some limit of education in school, that he was the guy who came and created survival of the fittest one in all of the species. And what a lot of people don't know is that he sent one of his students, a guy called Wallace Arnold, or Arnold Wallace. I always get that round the wrong way because I'm very dyslexic apparently. And okay, hold on, I'm losing you. So anyway, so Darwin's student was in the Galapagos Islands for many years, and really studying and researching. And then it struck me, my grandfather gave me a book years ago by a man called Sir Lawrence Isley, who basically catalogued the life of Darwin and the students around him. And as very often is the case, the student created and discovered so much intel that went to Darwin that was then espoused and delivered because it was part of Darwin's research. And this young man never got full recognition. And doesn't that, kind of blend through to so many other stories of great heroes of the past that never get their real attention.
So many. And it's interesting. I read a lot of Lawrence Isley's books in high school. Loved Lawrence Isley. Yes, just loved him. And I remember one, and he said, if one were going to find the origin of life, it would be a field in autumn. He had the most beautiful way of speaking about natural things with such reverence and such divinity. I was a biology major because I just loved the study of life, and the time-lapse photography of pollen sitting on the stamens of I don't know if it's the stamen or the pistil of the flower, and then the pollen is basically the sperm going down to the ovum, in the center of the flower. And in a poppy, that would be the part that has the opium in it. But in a Rosa rugosa, which we have on the coast here, it's the rose hip that then has all the seeds to grow the next generation. Nature is so generous. You look at one Rosa rugosa plant with these huge rose hips all over it, and then each is full of seeds. It's just a perfect example of the incredible abundance of nature.
Oh, so beautiful. And again, the natural elixir, the rose hip, which is used in birth, pregnancy, these environments when we were all very herbal, when we were all very much of the earth, and Lemurian times and more ancient times, and then modern day has kind of satanized so many things. And you, as a global OBGYN, a female doctor working in female anatomy and understanding birth and conception and all of that amazing technology, do you feel that as we are coming back into our own powerful individual ways, that from now forward, that most mothers will birth their babies the natural way, meaning not lying flat down in a Victoriana stance, but working with water, working against the pulls of gravity? What say you about that?
I've been trying to teach that now for decades and decades. And what I see is this enormous divide. So that you're going to see more and more technology on the one hand, and then the people who want the wisdom of nature. I mean, nobody would move their bowels lying in the dorsal lithotomy position. It makes no sense. We need gravity, and we need actually the way the pelvis, the anterior posterior diameter of the pelvis opens up when you're squatting. And so there's so much more room for the baby to come out. And I remember my second year of residency, I began to ask the questions we all must ask, which is, what would happen normally? What would happen naturally to a woman giving birth? Because what I was learning at that time was everyone who came in, you had the membranes ruptured with an amnio hook, you put in a 16 gauge IV, that's a big needle, it hurts like heck. You start the IV, you rupture the membranes, you screw in a fetal scalp electrode right to the seventh chakra where that spiral comes in, and then you snake in a fetal thing for measuring contractions, and you thread that up into the uterus, and then the woman's in bed. So she has now 1, 2, 3 lines connected to her at all times, so she cannot move. And then you're all set to have her labor because you can monitor everything. But what you've done is interrupted everything. And, you know, we wouldn't imagine you've got a prize racehorse down in the barn that's giving birth. Well, do you think that you would have all these lights on, you would have all these instruments in the horse, that you would be allowing 5 or 6 strangers to go in and examine the horse? No, everyone knows that would mess up the whole process. And so we've messed up the whole process royally. We now have, in some countries like Brazil, 90% cesarean delivery rate. In the United States, I watched it go from 10% to 25% overnight through the introduction of fetal monitoring, because we always go with technology first, don't we? We don't trust ourselves without technology. And now everything is an app on your phone. I refuse to get what are those things called? The Fitbit. I don't want my biometric data tracked in a database that anyone can read. So I'm for going back to normal. In fact, I was just driving with a friend and we both decided that we needed to buy roadmaps because we're losing the ability to navigate without listening to a voice that says, get in the left lane, go 200 feet. Yes, the GPS has been revolutionary. Yeah. I'll drive into cities. It's easy, all of that. But then you lose your ability. Now, the very famous study in London of the cab drivers, and they have to study for about 2.5 years to get their license. They have to know by heart here and here. They have to know where things actually are. Mm-hmm. And it's not like London was laid out on a grid. So they really have to know. And they did a study measuring their parietal lobe before they began the study and after. And what they found out is the hippocampus and the parietal lobe got way bigger from learning where all those roads were. learning where it is. And so now I even get a little nervous when I have a taxi driver or an Uber driver who just punches it in to the GPS, because a lot of times, especially in rural areas, the GPS is wrong. How many times have you arrived at your destination and it's in the middle of a forest somewhere?
Yes, or at the,
Like, no, I didn't.
mouth of a river, right? Exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrifying. It's terrifying. And for me, as somebody who spent many years working in the space industry, primarily the satellite communications and launches into space of said technology, it is all it would take is a coronal mass ejection, is a sun flare to kick out. And what people don't understand as well, like in terms of technology, when we look at the planet, we've got lower orbit, middle orbit, and geostationary orbit. And that is the third area, the third kind of space around our globe where we launch all the telecommunications, all the broadcast systems that we're watching each other now across Zoom, across the internet. And there's so much up there. There's so many satellites, and people don't know the full number, and all the countries lie. Come on, we know that. But it's a matter of 4 seconds between each satellite that could literally crash into itself. And as more and more greedy people are trying to dominate our planet from inside the planet and off the planet, they are creating and causing such havoc that it could take just a mass traffic crash, let's say, of said satellites to bump out. Then we've got no GPS, no nothing. And for those of you that think that's not true, I can't help you. All I can do is share, really, truly, we're at that point. You can't help people anymore. You just cannot.
No, you can't, because I get that a lot right now. What's coming in to us right now, fundraisers for people who've had the thing and are injured. I was just reading a blog, an interesting blog from a conservative radio talk host, and he said 33 people from his wedding 8 months ago are now dead. 33 people from the wedding. Fuck. And everyone who's dead got the juice. And it's happening just the way a bunch of us, I work with a group, we call ourselves the 5 Docs. So that's Dr. Lawrence Pilevsky, Carrie Maude, Lee Merritt, Sherry Tenpenny, and me. So back in 2020, 2021, we predicted what would be happening, and we all hoped against hope that we were wrong. We were not wrong. The other thing that we are seeing is the fertility aspects are horrific. They are horrific. And so when you said you can't tell anyone, you can't teach, I feel like the open moment for teaching is over, but I also want people right at this very minute to understand that we're going to be seeing things that you really wish you didn't have to see. But what's amazing to me is, imagine you go to a wedding 8 months ago and suddenly 33 people are dead. And if you were, when I was in med school, let's say that you had an outbreak of food poisoning, right? And they would show you these studies, these public health studies, so you would know how it was done. How do you track this kind of an outbreak? How do we, and you've seen all the movies of the CDC and all in the hazmat suits. This one, we just ignore. We have a 80% miscarriage rate in those who get the juice in the first 20 weeks of pregnancy. And my profession of OBGYN is still telling all pregnant women, you should get this, because if you don't, you could get much sicker. So this is the hypnotic trance, which is, oh, you're so lucky. Thank God you had all these doses, because if you hadn't, you would have been so much sicker. Meanwhile, you're at a wedding and 33 people from that wedding are all dead. And somehow you don't notice. And somehow your thing is, thank goodness I got this. It would be so much worse. And we're talking doctors, and nurses.
Yeah.
And the cognitive dissonance, Danny, you know, and I know, okay. So you and I have a certain frequency. What I know is my frequency of whatever truth and light is darn right toxic to a lot of people. And I would like all the empathic healer types, light worker types who are watching this to understand that you have enormous compassion for humanity, for the suffering that people are going through. But they will attack you at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
So there's people that you can't help. And I think it goes back to that biblical story of Lot's wife, where they say to her, don't look back, or you will turn into a pillar of salt. We're at the don't look back. Or as my friend, my trainer, who was a special forces medic, he said, we're at the point now where we just have to step over bodies. And I wish this weren't true. And it's amazing to me that you can go places. Even now, you can go to places in New York City, you can go to places in Los Angeles, where last year, everyone's walking around. Now, everyone's in a walker, has a cane, or in a wheelchair in the same neighborhoods. And they're not connecting the dots. And I talked to someone who's close to me within the family, and he said, well, you know, it's all the stress. No, it isn't. And I remember back in the fall of 2021, I did a podcast with Polly Toomey, who had done the movies about this stuff. And she said, well, what do you think this is? The juice. I said, it's a murder weapon. And I got hammered in the mainstream media, you know, but I mean, at this point, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know,
it's so sad. And, you know, everything that you've shared there has been out, you know, everywhere. It's on the news, it's in tabloids, it's in books, it's in broadcasts, it's in podcasts, it's everywhere. And it is the case that, you know, with that new juice technology, it wasn't known fully what might, could, would, should happen, other than people who are medically trained like you. And sadly, those who willingly accepted, believing that it was for the greater good of everybody, and all of that reverse psychology, horrific hypnosis that was done en masse to desensitize and then put people into different camps. And now we're seeing like horrendous things like that story of the wedding. It's just beyond heartbreaking. At this stage, we can't crumble and die in the sadness and the sorrow of that. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep being loving. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder and stand up for ourselves as individual souls and spirits. And, you know, you are and always have been this kind of global peace ambassador for the independent individual ownership of each being, you know, that you've treated, that you've medically attended to, and also for yourself. Is that not the case?
Yes, I think it really is. And my main teaching has been, this vessel is fearfully and wonderfully made. And I don't like the word fearful. So it's awe. The translation is actually awe, I think, in original Aramaic, just like, you know, that phrase, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's not the fear, it's the awe of how amazing nature is, how amazing this body is. And as a man thinketh, there he is. So our thoughts are so powerful. And at this, and the other thing that's powerful is this: if you're here, if you're listening to us, then you're one of the very few who gets it, who saw it. And you should be really very proud of yourself. I mean, we saw it from the beginning. I had a lawyer send me the funniest meme today. I want to read it because I loved that he sent it. Right after I got out of church. Okay, here it is. Cheers to all the legends who never succumbed to the hysteria, who never took a test, who never complied, and most importantly, those who knew it was all bullshit from the start.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
you're
well
right.
said, like, well said. And I think that's everyone who is still listening at this point, still listening at this point. Because one would think that we wouldn't all be so susceptible to this. You and I talked about this earlier before we went on the air, which is that we're sort of so addicted to the next bright and shiny object, particularly the ones who will tell us, how does this end? Oh, please tell me how it's going to end. And what I want you to know is your thoughts and your emotions right now are creating the ending. I had the pleasure of meeting Decode, who's astounding guy who worked a lot with the dumbs and all that early on. And he said, you need to understand something. The black hats and the white hats it's constantly this and that and this and that. So the outcome is never, you can't predict what will the time be, when will it end, when will it, we don't know. We don't know, but I do know this. How you think, how you spend your day, how healthy you are, what your vibration is, contributes. And somebody who is in touch with their essence, with who they are spiritually, as Alex Collier says, we're genetic royalty. We have so much more power than we can possibly know. When you are willing to sit in that, to stand in that, to not go into victim mode, you are creating the future that we all want. And I think that there's a whole bunch of us, like the ones at Burning Mask and a lot of the people at Reawaken America, that tour with Clay Clark, and all the other things that I have been at, we've all met each other. So, I have in my phone, I have you, and I have all these doctors and all these people that I never would have met. So what I would like to say to the deep state dark cult, ha, 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 ha. You didn't know what you were doing. We never would have found each other. We would have just, right. Yes, that's good. Okay, here's one for you. You ridiculous people. I mean, here's one for you. So that's it. It always backfires. The darkness tries over and over and over. What did someone say? They've been doing, it was Cliff High. This is what they've been doing for 6,000 years. It never works.
Right. And it's like, are we going to get it this time around? Are we going to get it? That we are not owned and that no one has permission to govern us. We put people, councils together ourselves. We decide who we trust, who's got the greatest love and interest for us, the masses, not for the little fucktards at the top that put themselves there or were bred into that or whatever. Now going back a little bit here, there's so many things I want to cover because you're just so fun. You're just so fun. And everyone watching Dr. Christiane, you've seen her on television for the last 30 odd years plus, easily. Yeah. 30. You're a bit of an icon in many, many different establishments. But when you and I talk, text, chat, see each other off screen, she's the same girl, guys, on screen as she is off screen. And that to me is always a massive tell too, right?
Isn't it? Oh yeah.
The two different refined personalities. Here's my TV face and here's my resting bitch face. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Now, you mentioned gene decode. Now, I know we have to protect friends, etc., and we will. But I'm pretty sure I'm okay to go just a little bit into. Can you share, because you've met him, like he's a mate of yours. Can you share a little bit about because he sounds like an old man, right? Which is amazing because he's actually an incredibly fit.
Oh, this is amazing. And I think that he did put on his channel at one point, him in his ninja outfit. I mean, okay, so you meet him and you think, yeah, okay, this is like your basic, middle-aged guy, right? And then toward the end of dinner, he's doing push-ups on one knuckle. he is demonstrating getting up from a sitting position like some kind of, he apparently can, and I don't doubt this, climb up, you know, the Diamond Head Wall in Hawaii, just right up there like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I saw these skills. He's been involved in martial arts for years and years and years. It's how he met his wife. She was one of his students, and he's extraordinary. So what I love about it is that it's so unexpected. You know, this is somebody who just looks like, he doesn't look like, you know, Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk, or Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. He just looks like an average guy. And then you watch him move. Wow. Wow.
It's amazing. And I love that. I love that. And so, you know, Decode has brought a lot of different information. He's helped to awaken a lot of people in different areas and levels. And then I just love that behind all of that, I know that he gonna kick your ass. He gonna kick your ass. You know, if anybody messes with him, it's like, he's the wrong guy. He is the wrong guy to mess with.
Yeah.
So going back a bit to something that you said, you mentioned Fitbit. Now that phrase, Fitbit, always makes me laugh because in America, it's technology, right? It's a piece of technology that will measure your fitness, your heart rate, your this, your that. But in England, somebody who is a Fitbit is a sexy man or a sexy yeah. So we go like, oh my God, he's such a Fitbit. What a Fitbit. So it always makes me laugh, like, when I hear that. Now, talking of Fitbits, you, my darling, you and I, one of the ways that we became friends was really through sharing a story that I lost my beloved fiance and you lost your beloved fiance in very tragic and very quick ways. And so we've talked and we've shared our grief and we've shared our beautiful men with each other. And from that journey, you have been creating an introduction service, or as some would call it, a dating site, which is beautiful. And I'm first in line to try out all the lovely men. Could you share with us what your Au Naturel introduction service, agency, or dating site is all about, please?
Yes. Well, what happened was I got a phone call from Layla Sentner, and Layla Sentner runs the Sentner Academy in Miami. And I had a granddaughter who went there back in January of 2021, I would say. And Layla was at the time very aware of the research that we were doing, showing that those who had simply been around those who had the juice were having symptoms. We had little girls who were having bleeding, this sort of thing. So what Layla did at her school is she said, I will not be hiring any teachers who've had this thing because I need more research before I allow my children to be around this. And at the time we were doing a big research project called My Cycle Story, which we started in April of 2021. And we currently have about 6,000 people who filled out our questionnaire. And we found out that in the world literature, if you do a Google search in the last however many years, there have been only 40 cases of what are called decidual cast shedding, which is where the entire inside of the uterus just comes out in one blob after days of cramping. Well, in our subsample, we found, I think, about 300 of those decidual cast shedding in a sample of 6,000 versus 40 in the entire world literature. And these were people who'd just been around those who'd had the juice. So I then meet Jared Yellen, who has 2 little kids at this school and is a tech entrepreneur. And he said, I have wanted to create a dating site for those whose DNA is still the way that God made it, because by the way, after you've had the juice, within 6 hours, your DNA is changed, and we have the data for that. So And so he got on the phone with me and he said, all right, I've had this idea for a long time, but I needed the face of it. I needed the right person to partner with to do it. And he said, because right now, my little kids, I can protect them. But what happens when they become adolescent or they go to camp or we want to go to theater or whatever? We need a world where my kids have safety around their own DNA, because we do not know what we have done to the human genome.
Right.
We don't know. I can give you some data, like fetal malformations are up enormously high compared to what they used to be. Stillborns are way up. So this is for those interested in, okay, so here's what I love about what we're doing. We're setting the bar high, like you're going to have to work a little bit to get in the database. And we're going to you have to have a little interview. In other words, it's not going to be swipe left, folks.
Right.
And it will be for those who have still their natural DNA and have not had the juice, because it's harder to find those people. I think about 30% of people are lost to follow-up. They're never going to change. 30% are like us. They saw it from the beginning. And then there's the middle, and they're kind of waking up. But in the meantime, we want to preserve humanity. This is about preserving humanity and bringing together those of like mind. So we are basing it on the principles of masculinity, femininity. This is a dyad that works. I don't care if you're gay. One person has to be respected. One person has to be cherished. We'll start with a couple geographic areas, because we've got to have people find love. That bonds of affection are the absolute basis of society. You know, and I know, when you were with your guy and I was with my guy, we would walk into a room and we know the egg and the sperm come together and create a new human. However, you don't have to be egg and a sperm coming together. When you have a masculine and a feminine energy coming together, and it's a loving soulmate relationship, it creates heaven on earth for everyone who's around you. It's why we all go to weddings. That is a ritual. A wedding is a ritual of the heart, So we all go to renew our faith in the masculine, the feminine, come together, create heaven on earth. So that's what we're doing. And we probably will launch in 60 days, and then we'll keep working at it. Eventually, what we'd love to do is have, communities, schools, churches, camps, where all of us, because what Jared told me that was so interesting, he said, before I hire somebody, I have one question that I ask. Have you vaccinated your children? And if the answer is yes, I don't hire them. Because when you haven't done that, everything else lines up. You question the medical profession. You believe in your own body's ability to heal. Don't walk in fear. You're a different kind of person. And so here I am working with tech entrepreneurs all over the world who are all on the same page. And it was amazing to me to talk with a very successful 30-something-year-old man who has 2 kids, 1 on the way, and who is absolutely determined to use the technology that we all have to bring people together in the most basic way, bonds of affection. Now, that also means, because I came up through the sexual revolution, Roe v. Wade, free love, all of that stuff. And in many, many, many ways, that wrecked the family and it wrecked society. And I remember going to my then husband's 25th Harvard reunion. I'll never forget it. That's the one where they really ask you for the big bucks so that they can keep their endowments in the billions.
Right.
And all the women from that time had gone to Radcliffe, but they all wanted to come over to get in the Harvard class picture.
Right.
I think class of 69, it was Tommy Lee Jones, and it was that climate change guy who was the vice president. Al Gore. Al Gore and Tommy Lee Jones were in that class. And a lot of the women had bought the, they'd drunk the Kool-Aid of the feminist movement. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. So here they were, and they had their first abortions at the same age that their mothers had their first children. And they then threw out the baby with the bathwater. Now, the 60s had to happen, the 70s had to happen. My mother, when my dad died, could not take out a loan in her own name. She couldn't do it. I mean, we had to have some changes. Absolutely, we had to have some evolution.
Yeah.
Now, we're at a stage where I want to bring together people who want to create bonds of affection in the unit of a healthy society, the family. The family. Now, I also want to bring together bonds of affection so that women like you and me can have life companions that we go through life with. And I was just talking with a friend of mine who has had a wonderful reunion with a guy that she was in love with, but he had all this stuff going on with grandchildren and this and that and the other. So she just said, you know, I don't want this part of my life to be about raising children. I'm sorry, I don't. I've done it already.
Yeah.
And she left. And they've just gotten back together. And the plan will be, she wants to live like in Mexico, and they'll get together because he said, I don't want to live the rest of my life without you. So these things are going to look different. I mean, for you, me, it's not going to be, okay, let's get the cottage with the picket fence and raise llamas or something. No, it may be, you know, that you will be in your place, but that for 3 months of the year, you'll be with him somewhere else or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're going to start with those people, probably, you know, women and men age, let's say, you know, 21 to 42, let's say, bring them together, people who still want to have children. And then we will have standard deviations off to each side. But this is not going to be a site for, you know, like Grindr. This is not going to be for a hookup. This is not going to be for a one-night stand.
Right.
This is going to be so that you can heal those childhood wounds that can only be healed within a relationship. Like, I don't know how you were with your fiance, but with my guy, Ron, I said to him, I can only go so far in my own healing on my own. I won't know what I don't know until I'm in a relationship. A relationship is the PhD spiritual ashram. It really is. And it really was, let me say. That healed me so deeply, so deeply.
Yeah, being with a man, whether you're a man with a man, whether you're a woman with a woman, because obviously we embrace, of course we do, we're humanity. That is the family, is the, you know, who we love. You know, we want whoever. That's why I became a reverend. I became an ordained minister in 2004. That's what, 16 years ago, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, just don't come to me for any math equations to be answered, because I'm not the girl for that. But I became an ordained reverend and did 18 months of ministry because I wanted to marry people who love each other, no matter male or female, irrelevant. I couldn't stand and will never stand, I'll never tolerate another person or a group dictating for the rest of humanity. No, you don't have my permission to do that. You never did. I didn't sign up. I came back to kick your ass. Just like you did. Just like you did. We're
Yes,
not having it. We're not standing for it. We do
No.
have the voice. We do have the love, the passion for our brothers and our sisters, and we are bringing it, and we have brung it, and it's not done yet, and we will continue. And it's not about being aggressive or trying to be right. It's about forming this beautiful love vibration for everyone. We leave no one behind. We leave no one behind, and we all make decisions that suit all of us, not the pithy retards. The word retard to me, there we are. Yes, it's all symbolic, isn't it? The word.
Yes.
Here's a cue. Here's a cue. Jesus. Honestly, drip, drip, drop, drop. Yeah.
I know it. I know it.
And this, this conversation we're having between two friends is going to be so triggering on so many different levels to negative people, or people who've got half the picture, or who get like for example, when I talk about, for my whole life, the study of paranormal, because it was basically forced on me, dark demonics, demons, aliens, extraterrestrials, particularly dark evil people in different groups, societies that do not benefit humanity, all of that, when you have grown and had to be forced into seeing that as a child, you grow up with a kind of a different backbone. I don't know how else to really describe that, but I know it was all part of my own personal mission on this planet to love my brothers and my sisters, and that's why I'm a full-time therapist. And as you know, I sit in session every day with people on Zoom mostly now, and help them reconnect to their inner child, go through their healing. We do some regression, we do some this, some that, because we all need to be standing in our own individual power, looking at what we brought to help support, or why ever I became a reverend, for example, was because no one's got the right to say 2 men can't marry and 2 women can't marry. No one's allowed to say that. Okay, it's forbidden. But more so where we are now, Christiane, is like, you standing in your power as an OBGYN, all these years of study and delivery and on in the field experience, and now where you're at on your personal self, you would love to invite a man of value to stand with you in partnership, love, sexuality, sensuality, fun, growth. And yet outside of that, you'll never stop developing and creating more in your own beingness, right? And to me, that's the balance of a good partnership.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. And, I had a session with Tarot by Janine, and then also my sidereal chart with what's her name? That wonderful astrologer. She does sidereal astrology out of Texas, Joni Petrie. And both of them, they both said, okay, a man is coming, and they told me when and all of that. So I can feel that. But the deal is this. Because of the intensity and the healing with Ron, I healed that, that thing, that longing inside where you were not complete.
Oh,
And that's always childhood. That's a childhood wound, always.
yeah.
So that got healed. Yeah, that got healed.
That's so beautiful. And again, you and I had discussed our beloveds. Mine was Jeff. And Jeff was a giant, just like your Ron was, big, muscular man who will kick your ass. But also that for me, he was the most loving, sweet, sensitive, intelligent teddy bear as well. And I'm a ballsy bird. And I never set out to demasculinate any man, but if I go to a restaurant, my natural happenstance is to scan the room. I want to see where I want to sit. I respect the waiters and waitresses and know they're on a station, the next person that comes in, their share tips and all of that. But I don't need to manage that because I want to have an experience, especially if I'm on a date. So I will I'll scan the room. I will ask the person leading me to table, can I sit there? Can I take that booth? And then when I first met Jeff, he was the only one to ever have the courage on the first or second date to say, I appreciate your independence, but will you let me be a man for you? Will you let me get your chair, get your door, choose something for us to eat or whatever? And I'm like, oh, yes.
Exactly.
Collapse, yeah.
I love that. Yes. The surrendered feminine. Yeah.
Totally. And not to be owned, but he just, he watched me and my behavior. I've been on my own for 12 years until not really a man at all. Harry in Monaco was a beautiful. I didn't really have a boyfriend of value or potential fiance partner since my first husband. So then when Jeff came along, I'm like, oh my God. So I'm so like independent for 12 years that, you know, it was such a shock. And then for him to say, it's okay, I got you. I'm like, oh my God, I can, you know, it was great. And that he was so in awe of my work. If I was doing a home visit to clients, patients, he'd be like, there'll be a message left on my phone. He'd be like, hey babe, who did you bless today? Who did you bless today? And sometimes when I worked from our home, we lived in a dome, a proper solar dome. I so recommend living in a dome home if you can. Sometimes he'd listen at my office door. I wouldn't know he was there. He wouldn't be interfering, but I'd come out, he'd be crying. I'd be like, what? He went, oh, he said that person got what they needed today. He was such a sensitive, beautiful. So I could look at this giant man, this huge 6'3", massive arms, you know, trained, beautiful, with the sweetest, softest heart in the world. And to me, he embodied everything. And so, like you said, I don't crave. I'm sometimes I would just love. But because I did so much healing with Jeff, that I don't lay awake every night thinking, God, I wish I had a man. But when I do meet my man, and I know I will, just like you do, I am ready for partnership, and I will never lose myself again. And it's like one of the things that people, I think in general, Christiane, is when we fall in love with some of the most outrageous, rebellious things that we find attractive in a person. And then sometimes we'll just dominate, kill that, crush that, and remove it from them.
Yeah.
And so now moving forward, we stand in honor, we stand in equal shoulder to shoulder, and we just honor the things that we love, and we honor the things that we can't and shouldn't change, you know, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. And I love this idea of your agency. So tell us again what it's called.
Au Naturel. And if you go to drnorthrup.com, that's probably the best, and sign up for my email, my free email. This is the best place to find it as we progress. We probably have it up in about 60 days for a trial run. We're going to do New York and Florida for starters, because we need to have proof of concept. And so we'll be starting there, and it'll grow rapidly. I'm quite certain. This feels divinely orchestrated. It really does. Yeah.
I'm so excited. And again, because you are such a globally, you're a glue body, a globally glue body. That's what you are. You're so loved on the planet in so many echelons and groups, and it's just amazing. And I feel so honored to know you and call you my friend, and, you know, leave you a funny message here and there, or just my fart gun down the phone or whatever, you know, and know that you've got this. Like wherever you are, like when we were in Mexico and we were speakers, we opened up the Burning Mask events for Huna Flash. It was so funny because your laugh is so great. Like you can hear you at the back of the room. You're like, yeah, that's Dr. Christiane. You know, just this free, humorous, just flowing, you know, woman that has this massive intellectual brain and this body of work that has been so important, you know, in the last 50 years of medicine, especially, you know, in OB/GYN, you know, for women. Did you ever read that book, The Red Tent by Anita Diamant? I did. Loved that book. I loved it. Could you talk a little bit about it, and maybe if you think it's appropriate to recommend it to people?
The book that I really loved is Daughters of Copper Woman. Oh. It's a very short book, and this was more the Native American approach to the menstrual cycle. And so what I want all women to understand is that there were tribes that were very pro-women and tribes that were not. But some of the ones in California, the women would come together in the Moon Lodge during their sacred bleeding time, and their visions would be used to guide the tribe. And so the word unclean, you know, they said women are, you know, are unclean, so you can't be around them. No, the original word is sacred, because when you are bleeding, when you're in your bleeding time and just before, the right and left hemispheres of the brain are talking to each other in a big way. And the only reason women have PMS, premenstrual syndrome, is that the truth that women know has been held down. And so in the second half of the cycle, from ovulation to the onset of bleeding, that's when you're preparing to give birth to yourself. If you're not pregnant, you're preparing to give birth to yourself. Whereas from the onset of the egg begins to grow in the ovary, then you get to ovulation, you're preparing to give birth to something or someone outside of yourself. And then the second half of the cycle, you're preparing to give birth to something from deep within. That has not been okay on planet Earth for hundreds of years. And that's why we have PMS. In the cycle, the menstrual cycle is the cycle responsible for all human life on planet Earth. And what have we done? We've called it the curse. We've said that women are on the rag, they've had to hide it, or they've had to take drugs to not have the period. That by female athletes, that's seen as the pinnacle of your training, that you no longer have a period. Okay, if you train that hard that you no longer have a period, then chances are very good you're going to end up with osteoporosis somewhere down the line, or anorexia. So the Moon Lodge was a place where women went to take care of other women. So you had like a 3-day period of time when other women would come in and give you your meals and rub your feet and care and nurture for you. Can you imagine if we all had a Moon Lodge to go to? Society as we know it would be completely changed. Instead of buck it up, suck it up, get through it. The reason women have menstrual cramps is because there's so much of the stress hormones, cortisol and epinephrine, on board during pushing through with your life instead of cycling with the moon. There's so many stress hormones that they literally take your estrogen and create another stress hormone as a result. And then you get prostaglandin F2 alpha, which causes your uterus to, cramp. And all of it is designed to get you to rest and restore. All of it. But we live in a solar culture, so we don't rest and restore ever.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you. I hadn't heard of that book. Guys, just to tell you also about The Red Tent, that's 2 really good books that people could read. The Red Tent by Anita Diamant is basically in the times of Rachel and Rebecca in biblical times, when we all lived in villages and tribes. And so the little girls would see the new mothers and breastfeeding their babies and giving birth. And so we all learned because we lived together. Now we're in these high-rise or apartments or houses, and we don't connect as women, as we did back in the day, obviously. And the Red Tent is about that when at a certain time of the month, most of the women, from the eldest to the youngest, would start their period on the same day, their menstrual cycle, their bleeding cycle. They would go into what was called the Red Tent, which is a beautiful tented area, and they would lay down on the straw and they would bleed, and they would tell stories, they would nurture each other, they would be fed. It was just a beautiful, nurturing, loving, which is obviously something that has been withdrawn from stories, in our history, because as we know, history, his story has been massively manipulated. And the woman, what idiot said, "You're going to be punished. Labor's going to hurt women because Eve took a bite out of the apple." How dare the person that ever said that say that? Because it certainly wasn't a loving presence. End of story. If you're triggered, that's all right. That's your trigger. It's not mine. Go and have a little thinky dink about why you're triggered. It's all right. Sending love. Now, what is that cat called, please?
This is Wilbur. He's named after my father.
Oh.
And he's a Siberian. That's his breed. So he's hypoallergenic, if you can believe it.
Wow,
And
he's so pretty. Looking at his mama.
He's a beautiful, beautiful boy. Beautiful boy.
Wow.
Yeah, he's just a love bug, and he always has been. However, I got 2, him and his sister, but my oldest daughter is here at the house these days, and I know when she moves, she'll be taking them with her because she just adores them beyond anything. And I've already, taken care of kids and taken care of pets, and it's okay. But for now, he's a wonderful, loving presence, a real cuddle bunny.
Oh my God, look at him with his, he loves his mummy. He really
Yes.
does. It's so beautiful. I was working with a beautiful client the other day on Zoom, and she's rescued this neurotic dog. And I was taking her into this very light hypnotic regression, and this dog came up behind her. She's got her eyes closed, and it put its paw on her shoulder. And it was so hard not to laugh. And she opened her eyes and she looked at them, and we just both burst out laughing. And this erotic animal. But our animals, they're so in tune. If we just let that drop down, that they're dumb, they don't have souls, and we let ourselves lovingly connect to them, my God.
That's right.
Isn't it just so beautiful?
It is. And I think that's where we have to go now. I listened to this wonderful guy whose name I can't remember, but he said, we're halfway through the ascension from 3D to 5D. We're halfway through. All the gnarly part is over. We can now take a breath and begin to have some fun and begin to enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And the people that say they jumped from 3 to 5, I hope they realize that we're going through 4th. No one's going to skip 4th. 4th is where unconditional love is. 4th is like what you're doing, having that moment, that unconditional moment. It doesn't matter that we're on a live broadcast and there's no pretense. You just pick that baby up. That baby needed love. You give that baby love. That's it. That's living in the moment. That is expressing and being an expressive human to a beautiful animal. That is the 4D. And then, of course, I'm very suspicious, anyone that's saying we're jumping direct from 3 to 5th. I'm like, why don't you want to go into 4th? Is it because you don't have a soul, or you can't feel love, or you're trying to organize to make that jump? Because we're in 4th, So anyway, I try and stay away from the densities and the dimensions, because I think people get a little bit too, off kilter with it. Yeah. Well, my darling, I don't even know how long. I mean, this is just like a normal conversation for you and I, which is so beautiful. I think we've been on for over an hour.
Yep.
Let us make sure that we covered everything that we wanted to cover, which was the Au Naturel, your beautiful dating site. The work that you're doing. I know that without going into territory, that the babies upstairs, as in the bullies, the retards. I was going to say earlier, to me, if you look in the word retard in the dictionary, you'll see the global leaders. You'll see their photos right there, right there. Sorry, not sorry, it's the truth. And again, we need to desensitize ourselves to like, oh, don't say that. Yeah, say it, because we wouldn't be in this mess if we all had the guts and the balls to think our thoughts and speak our minds and question.
That's right.
But yeah, so wrapping up, is there anything in particular that you would like to leave the beautiful audience that will see this?
Yeah, so let's say if you're a doctor or a nurse or a mortician or a lab tech or somebody, and you have seen something that you would consider a crime against humanity, I would like you to know about a site I've been working on called prosecutenow.io. Our server's in Iceland, but if you just go prosecutenow.com, you'll come to it. And then sometime by next week, or even now, you'll see over to the right on the nav, you'll see something that says, are you a medical professional? Under there, we're creating a way to upload sworn affidavits under penalty of perjury. And we've come up with 22 statements about this current thing that all the doctors I know agree on. And you can use that as your template to upload a sworn affidavit under penalty of perjury. And I'm going to give you full instruction when you go there, and how it is that we are planning to take down an ongoing felony homicide operation on planet Earth. So we're working with some very good lawyers, the same ones who got the mask mandate removed from airplanes. That's one law firm, but we're also working with common law. And so that should be ready to go probably early next week, this coming week, prosecutenow.com. So go there and just check it out, because there's a lot of good stuff on there. But this is what's happening. We're finding each other. Everyone's working pro bono. Nobody's making any money. We're just doing the right thing. Yeah.
Wow, that is massive. And thank you. I love the fact that there's 22 statements prepared, and that's a beautiful high frequency angelic number, as we know, but you've taken the time to prepare 22 statements, so people don't have to worry about what do I say, what do I choose, what do I pick. It's
Exactly.
done for me. I can just upload it, add my name to it or not, and be part of this beautiful turnaround love revolution, like lovingly loving on humanity and helping us all kind of join together and you know, take back our rights to think,
like you said, though. Yeah, we can't. One of the entrapments for people has been the sort of love and light people, like, you know, oh, you can't look at that. Oh, take the nasty thought back. This is what has gotten us into this mess.
Yes.
And so we need to. So I describe it this way: if you have sewage in your basement, you got to clean the sewage in your basement and add the second floor to your house. They need to happen at the same time. Or maybe you do one first, then the other. And so we've got to pay attention to the crimes that have gone on. People have to see that you can't get away with it. So these will be sworn, and you've got to get them, you know, you got to get them notarized, and you got to read it. And it's a legal proceeding. But then if we have hundreds of these, thousands of these, the game's over. The game is over. So, you know, those of you who've worked with the courts, those of you who know that the courts are all corrupt and the prosecutors are not doing their job, and they haven't been, we're going to go at it a slightly different way. So we could use your help.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for this complete and utter gift to humanity, to support humanity and protect generations behind us, and currently living as well. Christiane, Dr. Christiane Northrup, you are a legend, you are a goddess, you are love. And for those of you out there that already know this wonderful, wonderful being, she and I, we did a broadcast a few weeks ago that's also on my channel, which has another body of information that people might find interesting. And also there's the picture there as you playing your beautiful harp, which I know gives you enormous joy.
It does, yes.
That's because you're an angel.
All right. Good.
All right, my darling. Well, lots and lots of love to you. Thank you so much. And to you guys out there, bless you. You're going to enjoy this chat with our beautiful girl, Dr. Christiane Northrup. And I send you my love, and I'll see you soon.